Well, here's a national picture of what's happening with the weather in Australia on Sunday, the 25th of February, 2018. And if we zoom in to the southeast where I live, near Canberra, you can see it's still raining in this area. And Canberra had some flash flooding this morning from heavy rain. And there's still rain moving through Canberra. Pretty bad timing for the organisers of the Canberra show, which is on this weekend. It's the last day though, so at least it's the last day of the show, not the first day. But yeah, the Canberra Showground's on the north side, which is the area that's been hit by the flooding. You can't even drive up Northbourne Avenue. And now this rain's come in on top of the other rain, so it could cause more flooding, I'd imagine, given that it's already flooded. And yeah, you can see the last frame here is for 12/12? 12/12, of course it's 12/12. Today is 12 days away from Friday 9th of March 2018. And that's the date of the prophecy of Jacob Wetterling and Nathan Breeze. So today is 12 days before. And that's the 108 kilometre radar loop, which is based at Captain's Flat, which is pretty close to me. Captain's Flat is just there where the crosshairs, near the crosshairs, and I'm just to the west of Captain's Flat, so right in the rain at the moment, which is getting heavier by the looks. And yeah, you can go out to the 512 kilometre radar thingy, and it gives you just a different perspective on it. So now it's 12:17, and I've been talking about how Jake Wetterling, the Storm Boy as I call him, would have turned 12, but didn't because he was murdered and aged 11. So he's 11 going on 12, which is the time right now, 11:12. And his birthday was the 17th, which is also the last frame is at 11 or 12:17 Eastern Daylight Saving Time. And now it's 12:19. And 19 is the keystone number in The Dark Tower by Stephen King. And what happened on Monday, the 19th of February this year? Well, I experienced actually a pretty awesome coincidence that day when I was at McDonald's in Toggenall. And at the same time that I was experiencing that awesome coincidence, which related to somebody, I found out later, not till the next day, but I found out that Mount Sinabung in Sumatra in Indonesia had erupted in a big way. So 19, the keystone number in the Dark Tower, and that was 18 days before Friday 9th of March. Today is 12 days away. And it's a wet one. A wet one. Wetterling. And yeah, it's interesting, very interesting, that it's such a extraordinarily wet one. I connect Jake to eagles, and that eagle there came from Junee. Actually, Monte Cristo at Junee is where I bought that, where I've also got interested in a boy there named Ralph. And Ralph Morris died aged 9. Ralph was 9 years and 9 months old when he died, and that was in 1899. And Ralph actually died 99 days before he would have turned 10, and he was buried on the 9th. So I call Ralph the 9 boy. So this prophecy for the 9th of March, Friday the 9th of March, very symbolic in lots of ways, in connection to a few different kids who died in really bad ways. But just because you die in a bad way doesn't change the fact that you lived an awesome life. That's one thing that Jake and Nathan are pretty big on. And they're big on the fact that living a good life, like how you die, does not define you. if you live a great life, even if you die young, your life is not defined by what happened to you. And you don't have to be remembered or think of yourself as a victim. And Jake and Nathan certainly are not the type to think of themselves as victims. And of course it's in the underworld where they know each other now. The data is quite symbolic because the first cyclone in Australian waters this year was named Dahlia, and it was named by the Indonesian Weather Service at the same time that Mount Agung was erupting in Bali. That was around the 28th of November 2017. So it's interesting. I made a video earlier where I talked about all the dreams I've had over the years. And when I was making that video, I had no idea there was flooding happening in Canberra. Symbolically, I mentioned the 12-year-old twins, Daniel and Samuel, in Red Rain by R.L. Stone, 2/12 to 24, and Nathan Breeze was born on the 24th of November. Like Jake, he was born on a Friday, and Nathan died on a Saturday, Jake died on a Sunday. Today is Sunday where I live, but it's Saturday where Jake is. Nathan born on the 24th. Nathan died on the 7th of February 2009. So today's actually 9 years and 18 days after Nathan died, Nathan Breeze. 9 years and 18 days. So Friday 9th of March 2018 is the birthday of a friend of mine who's turning 27. Jake equals 27. Code equals 27. Red equals 27. My birthday is on the 27th of April, also a Friday this year. Friday the 27th of April is my birthday. And Ralph Morris from Junee, the boy I mentioned, the 9 boy, his birthday is the 18th of May. He was born on a Saturday. 18th of May 1889. He died in 1899. So he's born on Saturday, 18th of May 1889. And he died 99 days before his 10th birthday. You can rearrange 1889 into 1988. And Jake Wetterling turned 10 in 1988, which was the year I turned 12. So that's yesterday, if you're in Minnesota. Turn 6 on its head and you get 9. Yeah, and spell God backwards you get dog. Well, Jake had a pet dog named Marcus, which he named after a football player, because Jake was a very sporty kind of kid, into sports. And Oi is the creature in the Duck Tower, the Billy Bumbler. And a Billy Bumbler is like half raccoon, half dog. And Jake decides to call him Boy. And he says Oi. Repeats it without the B. So Oi it is. Oi, Marcus. So, Jake is wicked. Satan, the ill kid, Jacob ascended. Heaven shine. Blaine is a pain, and that is the truth. 5 5s are 25, and today is Sunday, 25th of February 2018. And we are 12 days away from Friday 9th of March 2018. Friday 9th of March, Friday 27th of April, and then we have the 18th of May, which would also be a Friday. L equals 19. L equals 12. 19 is the keystone number. in The Dark Tower by Stephen King. And the letter S is 19. S for snake. S for Satan. So Jake is wicked Satan. The ill kid Jacob ascended heaven's shine. So why is Jake Satan? Well, maybe it's because Ralph, the name Ralph, also equals 55. Burn, 55. And when people get tortured and murdered, it's usually often it's by people who publicly have good morals and good ethics and hold themselves up as upright, outstanding citizens in the public domain. But then behind closed doors and privately, they abuse and torture and do all kinds of bad things to people. And that was definitely the case with the guy who killed Ralph Morris. Christopher Crawley was the same man who donated the church, the little plot of land actually where the church was built, St. Joseph's Church in Junee. And yet he was a murderer. He murdered at least 2 of his employees, and Ralph was one of them. And this was all in 1898. Late November, early December is when Ralph Morris was burned in his straw bed in the stables by his boss, who threw a lit match into the straw bed that Ralph was sleeping in, because the servant boy and stable hand hadn't got up for work that day. And that was his way of forcing him up. Too ignorant and arrogant to realize the kid was actually sick, and too sick to get out of bed because he had a fever. So he couldn't get out of the bed even though it was burning, and he burned. And someone did pull him out of the burning stables, probably one of his parents, Rose or William, but too late. He was burned, horribly burned. And back then there was nothing they could do much for burn victims. So Ralph struggled on for 10 weeks. He survived for 10 agonizing weeks before he finally died. Then they never even gave him a proper funeral. He was quietly buried out at the cemetery. He was a Catholic boy, Irish Catholic. That's why he was like a slave. Back then the Irish Catholics had no rights. There are people enslaved in the world today too, heaps of people. But back in 1899 in Australia, it was the Irish Catholics who were the slaves. That's why Jacob and Nathan and Ralph, along with Ebony and some others, have put together this extraordinary prophecy, which is basically intended to be a message against political authoritarianism and hypocrisy, including religious hypocrisy. It's funny how if you embrace spirituality without doing it within a structured, organized religion, a psychiatrist will look down their arrogant nose at you and diagnose you as being a schizophrenic. And they have the power then to force you to take medication, antipsychotics, whatever. Often they get generous kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies. I'm not a conspiracy theorist in those regards, but I am a realist and I know what goes on. And I've got no issues taking antidepressants if I need them. I've taken them several times in my life. But I do resent being forced to take antipsychotics when I'm not schizophrenic. I've been through some bad times. I talked about what happened to me when I was 13 in my last video. Or in my second last video. The one I made earlier when I didn't even know that Canberra had been flooded today. And I've mentioned Canberra a lot in my recent videos. Anyway, yeah, I resent that. I resent being treated like that and being disbelieved about what happened to me when I was 13. I think that's disgusting. And I think if you're going to bother calling yourself moral or ethical or say that you have values, then you might want to start with keeping kids safe. It's a really good place to start, is keeping kids safe from harm. And, you know, where to start on that issue? Something that's disgusted me about Australia's government recently is that Australia's federal government, I've barely heard a mention of what's happened in Myanmar to the people of Myanmar, the Rohingya Muslims there, religious minority. Now, I'm not big on religion, I don't like religion, but I tell you what I like a lot less, and that is hearing about kids being thrown into fires to burn to death, which is basically what happened to Ralph Morris over a century ago. It's disgusting. And how people can call themselves a Christian and go to church and worship God and glorify God and give thanks and praise and all the rest of it, after doing something like that to a 9-year-old boy, it's sickening. If you go to this cemetery at Junee where Christopher Crawley's buried, he's got a great big massive headstone. You'd think, oh, what a highly respected man he must have been. And it's not true. Well, he was feared. He wasn't respected, he was feared. And people certainly would not have respected him had they known what he did to that boy and to another one of his employees who he pushed off the balcony and murdered because she was pregnant, either to him or his son. This is true information, this is not just made up. I've done a lot of research, and the owner of Monte Cristo today, Reg Ryan, he showed me more than enough news clippings, old news clippings and the rest to satisfy me that it was true. What happened to Ralph was definitely true. I've even got his birth certificate, his death certificate. It states how he died. It states there's hardly anyone at his burial. He was buried on Thursday the 9th of February 1899. He died the previous day. And getting back to the Australian government and Myanmar, little kids being thrown into fires, not just one or two, but dozens, hundreds of children torn out of their mother's arms, thrown into fires, burned to death, agonizing death, horrifying death. And the great bastion of democracy and freedom, what, is that Australia? Or America? At least America did react to what the atrocities. The American government, as much as I don't like the current government in America, at least they did respond to some degree to what happened in Myanmar. Australia's government has not responded at all. It sent a little bit of money, like a token gesture of money to the refugees, to help the refugees. But on the other hand, it's doing everything to demonize refugees who come from certain countries, including Myanmar, including Rohingya Muslims. If you're a Rohingya Muslim looking for asylum, good luck trying to find it in Australia, because they won't welcome you here. They won't welcome you in America. Donald Trump won't welcome Muslims. And that's exactly what underpins what happened to Ralph Morris, who back in the day was an Irish Catholic. It's just evil. And they talk about the mystery of God and the mystery of evil. There's no mystery. It's just straight out hypocrisy and not caring. And it's funny how today a lot of the God people, the religious people, are the people who, mock climate science and mock climate scientists and mock anyone who basically wants to try and do something about climate change. I mean, it's so politicized that there's virtually no hope, I don't think, of doing anything in time to stop a lot of suffering from climate change as well. If you're not going to keep kids safe, seriously, if you're not going to react to kids being thrown into fires to burn to death in their hundreds, then you lose all your credibility if you're trying to paint yourself as someone that is a world leader in promoting good values. You just lose all credibility. That's how I see it. So now maybe you'd have a better idea of why I'm saying Jake is wicked, Satan, the ill kid Jacob. Ralph ascended, heaven, shine. Blaine is a pain, and that is the truth. 5/5/25 and Sunday 25th of February 2018. He's 12 days away from Friday 9th of March 2018. 12, the age in between Jacob and Nathan. L is 12. L for Linda. Linda equals 40. Payne equals 40. Jake would have turned 40 on Saturday, the 17th of February this year. A date that coincided with the landfall of Tropical Cyclone Kelvin. Kelly is my last name. Saturday, both Jake's and Nathan's birthdays are on Saturdays this year. Today is Saturday the 24th of February. Nathan's birthday is Saturday the 24th of November. November, the 11th month. Jake was 11. 11 and 13 is 24. And Saturday 24th of February 2018, Nathan died on a Saturday. He died in the Black Saturday bushfires on Saturday 7th of February 2009. So Saturday 24th of February 2018 is 13 days. The age Nathan was when he died was 13. 13 days away from Friday 9th of March 2018. Turn 6 on its head and you get 9. Yeah, and spell God backwards you get dog. Jake had a pet dog named Marcus. Oi, Marcus. Oi, the Billy Bombler in the Dark Tower. Jake Chambers, the boy who became good buddies with a Billy Bumbler in a story by Stephen King, a made-up fictional story. Yeah, he was the same age as Jake Wetterling in real life. Jake was 11 when he was murdered. So many parallels, so much symbolism, and all connected by the minds of these boys. Where are they now? What is the underworld? It's interesting, isn't it? What, you think I'm crazy because I'm talking about spirituality without preaching off a pulpit? There's too many hypocrites who preach off pulpits. And they've lost their credibility for a reason. They never took child abuse seriously. They failed to protect kids. And if you're not gonna keep kids safe from non-consensual violence and harm and abuse, then you're a joke. If you're trying to paint yourself as an authority in the world of values, decency, morals, ethics, you're a joke. And I'm afraid that's what Australia is, because of the way it's reacted to the Australian government, the way it's reacted to what happened in Myanmar. 6,000 people murdered, textbook ethnic cleansing, attempted genocide basically, and just continue with business as usual. The same old relationship as normal. No, nothing about it. And that's sad, because it shows that both major parties are just, all they care about is governing, winning power. It's not like the Labor Party is standing up making any noise about that issue, because it wouldn't be a vote winner. It may be a big, huge moral issue. They don't care if it's not a vote winner. That's the fact. It's very sad. It's very sad for the victims of the horror. Because it is horror. It's total horror. And what's happening with the rain? What is it? 1240. Just caught the 40. The value of pain. Oi also has a value of 40. 41, the value of brat. But it's also the value of good. 41. A good brat. Someone that's not a hypocrite. Someone that maybe doesn't seek power over people at all costs. So 1235 is the last loop. It's now 1241. We are 12 days away from Friday, 9th of March. So Canberra is around there. So the rain probably easing soon, maybe. It's very hard to say when it's like this, because it keeps forming. I don't think this trough is moving very much. Actually, that's the big picture, so just because that's not showing rain real close to, like showing rain in Canberra, yeah, it's sort of going to ease off. But it'll need to, because they've already got flooding there. But it's also, yeah, I think it's coming to towards the end. Even though it's, as a whole, that rain mass is getting bigger. Definitely. It's hard to say. Keeps generating. So what warnings have they got? There's the satellite. You can see the front that's coming through that's causing this. And there's all the temperatures. 17 in Melbourne. Nathan Breeze lived near Melbourne. Nearly 15 in Canberra now, so it's dropped here. And it's going to be finer for the rest of the week after today. So then it's like lots of 11s as minimums. 11 to 13, Jake's age and the value of Jacob. Then 13, Nathan's age. It's pretty cool. Dead Jacob, dead is 14, the opposite of brat. Dead brat, add them together, you get 55, the value of Satan. Satan, the word that everyone fears, the name everyone fears, but is it the name everyone should fear? Who are people worshipping? Severe thunderstorms. So they issued another one at 11:37 today. 25th of February 2018. Not too surprising. Pretty much the same area as earlier. Anyway, I'm going to finish this video by showing you today's news. And it does actually include a little story on the flooding that hit Canberra this morning. But it's not at the start of the news that I'm about to show. I'm going to show you a couple of other stories as well that kind of relate to what I was talking about today, coincidentally. And this is the 11 o'clock news. And take note of the time when the story comes on, because this is 11:06 now. Take note of the time when the story comes on about the flooding in Canberra. 11:06 is just in the bottom of the screen. Hopefully you can see it. Here we go.
Matt Doran there reporting from Canberra. Now, the Prime Minister has wrapped up his US visit with an address to the country's National Governors Association. Mr Turnbull praised America's role in ensuring peace and prosperity since World War II. North America correspondent Connor Duffy has more from Washington.
Today, I think we've gone from the worst phone call ever, going back to that infamous clash between President Trump and Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, to what the Prime Minister is today saying is the best visit ever. He said that his rather large entourage of premiers and business leaders have really struck a chord with their counterparts here in the US. The Prime Minister even gave the President and the First Lady a set of matching R.M. Williams boots, and Lucy Turnbull picked out a scarf, apparently, for the First Lady. That we spoke about 100 years of mateship several times during Mr Turnbull's speech. And here's a little of what he had to say about how he thought the visit had gone.
And this has been a great example of effective diplomacy in action, effective engagement. We see eye to eye. Our American hosts are enthused by our commitment. We have got across the message very clearly that America's commitment in our region is vitally important for us and for the United States and for the region. And of course, you've seen the strength of that commitment here. So, a very valuable visit.
Malcolm Turnbull spoke about the importance of tightening the sanctions and the vice on North Korea to get it to abandon its nuclear program. And interestingly, he spoke quite a lot about our region. He, in his address to the National Governors Association today, said that US and Australian companies should work together to build infrastructure in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. And while he didn't mention China by name, many analysts have said they're concerned by China's growing influence in the region by its low-interest loans to countries throughout the Pacific. So perhaps that was a sign from Malcolm Turnbull that the US and Australia could do more, and a plea for the US to remember not to forget about this region in this era of America first. But on the issue of sanctions, here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
One of the most significant ways in which North Korea is seeking to evade sanctions is through exchanging goods, oil in particular, at sea. So we need to be acutely alert to that. We are, and we need to cooperate and ensure we do everything we can to tighten the vice of those sanctions. That is the way to bring North Korea to its senses without conflict.
At times today, it felt, even though Malcolm Turnbull acknowledged that the US would not be rejoining the TPP anytime soon, it felt like a pitch that the US should do that down the track. The Prime Minister spoke about post-World War II values and the influence that the US had had on world affairs and the importance of trade to peace and prosperity. And he told the governors who, among them, there could be the next President of the United States. There'll be the people that'll be running for nominations in a couple of years' time. He told them about how important he thought the TPP was and how much value he thought it was going to bring to the region. The Prime Minister also spoke about the connections that the business leaders that he brought with him were forging here in America. However, there was one fly in the ointment when it came to trade, which is that there's been news in America in recent days that the US is planning on imposing very steep tariffs on steel and aluminium, and the Prime Minister was asked if he'd been able to secure an exemption from Australia from that, and effectively the Prime Minister said he'd put his case, but it does not appear that Australia will be exempt, so that could be a thorny issue for Australian-American trade if that goes through.
North America correspondent Connor Duffy reporting from Washington. After days of deadlock, the UN Security Council has unanimously voted for an immediate 30-day ceasefire across Syria. It's hoped the truce will allow aid to reach areas including rebel-held eastern Ghouta, where more than 500 civilians are said to have been killed in government airstrikes in the past week.
The people of eastern Ghouta woke up this morning to continued aerial bombardment, and the news from New York that the Security Council remained deadlocked and still couldn't reach agreement on how to bring about even a temporary halt to the killing. Delay in Syria always brings more death. At least 120 children have been killed since Sunday, according to human rights activists. Hospitals overwhelmed by the number of casualties have been targets of the government's bombing. On the fringes of the Security Council, the tensest of negotiations, but always a sense of urgency from the backers of this resolution, and always the unresolved question, would Russia allow it to pass?
I would call upon those who are in favor of the draft resolution to raise their hand.
When it came to a vote, the Russian ambassador held his arm aloft, not to wield a veto, but to finally agree. Yet Western diplomats still attack Moscow for delaying its passage for days.
As they dragged out the negotiation, the bombs from Assad's fighter jets continued to fall. In the 3 days it took us to adopt this resolution, how many mothers lost their kids to the bombing and the shelling?
While we have been arguing over commas, Assad's planes have been killing more civilians in their homes and in their hospitals, imposing unbearable suffering.
The Russian ambassador was pessimistic about the chances of the ceasefire, saying there weren't concrete guarantees from warring parties to abide by it. This resolution brings the hope, at least, that aid convoys will soon be driving through these streets and medical evacuations can finally take place. But even after the Security Council agreed its passage, reports came from eastern Ghouta that government warplanes were continuing their week-long bombardment.
Pretty disgusting, huh? What's happened in Syria? It's disgusting. It's gone on for years. and years and years. And if there's one government that I think is atrocious in the way it has contributed to what's happened in this part of the world, it's Russia. And it's strange, Assad, the president of Syria, is an atheist. He's not a religious type. He's atheist. Syria is predominantly Muslim, but they're being led by an atheist dictator. So, it's weird. It's weird. It's weird how Vladimir Putin, also formerly an atheist, a communist, a KGB man, was able to walk so easily into the boots of the Orthodox Christian crusader against gays, against all kinds of people, all kinds of minorities. They always pick on the minorities and bully and hurt the minorities and then label them as terrorists. That's how dictators work. That's how they operate. And make no mistake, Vladimir Putin is a dictator in every way. Next story is about the Turpin kids. 13 of them. This story was on yesterday too. Remember what I said? 11, 12. Jake was 11, going on 12. That's the time right now. And 12 is the age in between 11 and 13.
More charges of child abuse have been laid against the Southern Californian couple accused of starving their children in the United States. David and Louise Turpin initially pleaded not guilty to charges of torture after their 17-year-old escaped the house last month and called police. She alleges her parents starved and tied up the children. Authorities say the home reeked of human waste and evidence of starvation was obvious, with the oldest sibling weighing only 37 kilograms. They've not said how long the children were held or why. Heavy rain this morning has caused severe flooding in Canberra. Our reporter, Gordon Taylor, now joins us. And Gordon, just how bad are conditions there? It looks like the rain may have been easing off, but the flooding is quite evident.
Yes, we've had major flooding this morning, mainly in the north of Canberra. The main road out of Canberra, Northwood Avenue, is closed right from the city all the way to the showground on the edge of Canberra. At one stage, we've had several cars flooded, stuck in the floods. Behind me, you can see some water in a suburban street. People are actually getting water out of their flooded house. The SES has had a huge number of calls, mainly from flooding through roofs and collapsed roofs from the rain. It was very, very intense at one moment. Police are asking people to stay away from the flooded areas and only drive if necessary because the conditions are so terrible out here.
So, well, I imagine, given that that is such a major road as well, this will cause some havoc there in Canberra for people as they try and get on with their weekend.
Well, that's right, and of course this weekend is the Canberra show. It was already struggling. Now they still don't know whether they're going to open today for the rest of the show, so that's a major blow to that organisation. We've also heard of flooding out near the airport in a rural area, and farmers are also being advised to maybe move their stock to higher ground because they may be in danger as well. So ramifications outside of Canberra, but also in the north of Canberra here, disrupting people's weekend, but also causing quite a lot of damage. And even though you say the rain is easing, it is easing now, but the SES says that they'll be responding to calls all day and expect a long night as well.
So do we anticipate that that flooding might in fact remain in those areas for some time to come, and do we anticipate that there may be more rain on the way?
Well, we think there may be more rain on the way. It is easing, but of course the floods often take quite some time to peak after the main rain event, and so we haven't seen any evidence yet of the floodwaters receding. We've got the major river through the north of Canberra, Sullivan's Creek, which we're right next to at the moment. It's broken its banks and is flooding, and that's part of the reason you're seeing houses behind us flooded.
Number 11.
So we will anticipate some more time yet while we wait for those floodwaters to recede, as you say there. Gordon Taylor reporting from Canberra.